Welcome everyone to the Native CDFI Network's weekly Friday meeting of community development financial institutions and our friends and allies and partners that care about Native CDFIs. My name is Jackson Brossi, and I want to say thank you to everybody who's joined and our friends and family across the country. We've got a great guest today. I'm really excited about Congressman Tom Cole joining us for the first bit. And before we get into the Congressman's background, I just want to restate our purpose here. We're here to share relevant and timely information with our Native CDFIs, learn from each other, and connect because our Native CDFIs have really risen to the challenge presented by COVID-19 and shutdowns, and you all are really on the economic front lines. So thank you. And with that, I want to acknowledge our board members that are on the call. We have Cora May Haskell from Four Bands and Christopher Coburn. And Christopher Coburn, do you want to actually, I'll save some time for you when we introduce the Congressman, since we're from Oklahoma.
Okay, thanks.
All right. Okay, great. So here's our agenda. I think we should be able to end a little early today. First, we're going to hear from our special guest, and then we have some OFN highlights and some news and other announcements. But first, I'd like to start off with just acknowledge Veterans Day was on Wednesday this past week, and the special place that Veterans Day plays and veterans have in Native communities across the country. I think we all know that Native people have served honorably in every single conflict that America has been involved in, even going back to the Revolutionary War. And just this week, a new Veterans Memorial was opened on the Smithsonian. And so when things open back up, and hopefully when we have our annual meeting late next year, hopefully we're able to go see that together. So I want to say thank you to all our veterans. And I want to say, are there any veterans on the call today? I don't see any.
Yes.
Hey, cool. Ted?
Yes, Paul Hodgert.
Hey, Paul. Okay. Thank you.
Canadian Army, but still veteran, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Paul. Cool. Our allies in the north. And our guest, his father was a veteran. And our special guest, I'm really excited to announce that Congressman Tom Cole, who represents Oklahoma's 4th District, is our guest today. And he's a member of the Chickasaw Nation. He's joining us by phone today, and really someone that is a leader in Congress, not just the House, but Congress as a whole, someone who has a reputation of reaching across party lines and working and really being a champion for Native nations and Native people. And he serves on the Appropriations Committee, an important committee for Native community development financial institutions. And we really wanted to hear from him. But before we get there, I want to see if we have one of our leaders from Oklahoma, Christopher Coburn, who heads up the Muskogee Fund. See if he has any quick words before Congressman Cole goes.
Well, yeah, Congressman Cole, thank you for being on the call. I haven't had the pleasure of meeting you. I live in the 2nd District, but we greatly appreciate what you do in Congress and how you represent the spirit of what Native American tribes and people can do, and supporting what we do in business and supporting how we stand up people. So haven't met you before, but I wanted just to say hello and thank you for what you do, sir.
And thank you, sir. Congressman Cole, are you there? I think you might be on mute. Okay. Hey, Josh, you know if he's on?
Hey, yeah, this is Josh. I'm not sure. I can find out. We're not together. We're doing this all remotely. So
Okay. So,
let me touch base with Sabrina, Josh, and see if he's on there.
okay. All right. Thanks. Well, I think we might have to come back to Congressman Cole, but we have his team on. That's for sure.
This is Sabrina with the Congressman. I'm so sorry for the delay in us dialing in, but I have him now.
Okay, great. Congressman Cole, thank you for joining us. Again, this is the Native Community Development Financial Institutions CDFI Networks Friday call, and our folks represent states across 27 different states across the country, and all really on the front lines of the COVID economic downturn. And I'm really proud to say that our members have really stepped up. So we're excited to hear from you, and see how things are going. So Congressman Cole, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you very much. And much more importantly, thank you for what you do. And as everybody on this call knows, COVID-19's been tough for the entire country, but it's been tougher for Indian country than it's been for any other part of our population. And so we've been disproportionately hit, and appreciate your efforts in helping the respective tribes that you work with and represent to work their way through this crisis. And of course, it's a healthcare crisis and shows a lot of the disparities in our current system, but it's also an economic crisis because it's wreaked havoc with a lot of the business enterprises, particularly in the travel and leisure and gaming industries that are a pretty important part of the economy for not all tribes, but certainly many tribes. In Washington, we've actually done, at least until recently, quite a bit. In the CARES Act, we got $8 billion set aside for tribal nations. That's the largest transfer of wealth from the federal government to tribal governments in the history of the country. And I have to say, it was a terrific bipartisan effort. I worked very closely with Deb Haaland and, frankly, with Democrats and Republicans on both sides of the aisle. Mark Meadows, the president's chief of staff, was extremely helpful. At one point, the amount of money we were going to get had dropped down to $2.3 billion. He intervened and helped get us back up to 8. We were hoping to get 10. Of course, you ask for more than you hope to get. But again, we ended up well. That we also got an additional $1 billion plus for the Indian Health Service, and then got over $400 million set aside and help for Indian hospitals. So again, there were a number of victories in that area that have helped a lot of tribes. The sad part is we haven't gotten a follow-on bill yet, and that's too bad. I mean, I think there's a lot of blame to go around on that, but the biggest single thing is, in my view, Speaker didn't want the president to get a bill before the election, and so we had opportunities to get bills of $1.5 trillion to $1.8 trillion. I think we could have gotten a fairly good slice of that. We certainly have requests in for an additional $20 billion funding to assist tribal governments, $900 million more to, again, help specifically on coronavirus, and again, additional money for Indian Health Service, you name it. So my hope is when we finally do get a bill that tribes remain at the table in the same way that state and local governments were at the table last time with tribal governments. And we were part of a larger package, and for the first time in a long time, tribal governments were set aside, not said, well, the states can deal with that, and we all know that that doesn't work well. There's also, other specific legislation we'd like to get done, either in the balance of this Congress or in the next one. Specifically, again, my friend Deb Allen from New Mexico has a very good bill, HR 1900, which is the Native American Business Incubators Program Act, and that would establish business incubators within the Department of the Interior to promote economic development in reservation communities. We also we did get HR 1937, the Indian Community Economic Enhancement Act, by Representative Torres from California. So again, we work together on these things, and we know there's a lot to be done in Indian country, both in the balance of this year. My guess is, at this point, I'm not too optimistic we'll get another bill done before now and the end of Congress. I know there's some negotiations on that, but the two sides are far apart. Obviously, the administration is focused on trying to remain in office, so it's hard to get their attention on anything beyond that. Plus, we have the basic funding of government that runs out December the 11th. There'll be an effort to try and get an omnibus, but I'm not sure that's likely either. More likely to me is another continuing resolution that boots things into early next year, because by that point we'll know what the Senate is like. We'll know, who the president is, although I think that's very likely to be Vice President Biden. But you'll have, again, continuity, and I think we'll be able to start policy initiatives. But what's possible between now and the end of the year, I think, is really, really hard to determine right now. So, I can drone on, but I think I'd rather answer questions that people might have and see what I can do to be helpful.
Well, thank you for taking the time, Congressman. Yeah, we definitely want to hear from you. And one of the challenges with COVID-19 is, we're not able to meet with you in person. And so appreciate you taking the time here. So without any other things, I want to see if any of our members have any questions for the co-chair for the House Native American Caucus, Congressman Tom Cole. Yep. Yes.
Jackson.
Yep. You want to read?
This is Christopher Cope. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm the connection. I tried to introduce myself at the beginning. This is Christopher Coburn. I'm with Muskogee Fund, Muskogee Creek Nation. I haven't met you in person, but we greatly appreciate what you do, sir. One of the things I'm wondering is, with our Oklahoma delegation, yourself and Congressman Mullen are on board, but how do we help tell the story better to Congress of how important CDFIs are, both to, it's a completely bipartisan effort on lifting people up, especially lifting people up in each country. But it seems
go ahead.
Congressman Lucas seems to be not so far on board when our teams have done outreach on the Hill and a few others. So how do we get that story across to people that maybe don't understand or have a limited view of what we do? I don't think we tell our stories well enough.
Well, I don't know any way other than just what you're doing, honestly, which is just member by member and working through the Native American Caucus itself, which, as you know, has many members that are not Native. It's not just those of us that happen to be tribal. We have, of course, many members on both sides of the aisle that honestly are pretty good on our issues and, represent large tribal constituencies in the country. It really is building the relationships, getting them out of their offices and their staffs out of their offices into reservation communities or different parts of Indian country and showing them what both the opportunities are and the challenges are. Again, it's probably a little bit easier in Oklahoma in some ways, simply because we have so much tribal presence in our state, between 39 tribes, and a very substantial part of our population are tribal members, much more than I think just about any other state in the country. And that's given us maybe a little bit of an edge, but it's still, at the end of the day, it's just a matter of doing that. And then also, legislation moves because chairman wanted to move. We've got a very pro-tribal chairman at Interior with Rahalva from Arizona. He's a great guy, good friend. When he became chairman, I said, well, I'm a good Republican and all, but at least I got a chairman that I know is going to be with me on Indian stuff, and he is. So I think, sometimes just talking and getting those guys to focus on the specific things you want them to do, they can do a lot to educate and bring along other members and move legislation.
Thank you, sir.
You bet. Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or thoughts or comments from anyone else on the call? I know we have representative from the Cherokee Nation's Economic Development Trust on, and we got a few other members from Oklahoma, but
well, the ones from Oklahoma all know we'll do what we're told to do. So at least I will. And very, very proud of the contribution our tribal economies in Oklahoma have made, not only to our individual tribes, but honestly to the entire state. I think the tribal presidents in Oklahoma, tribes employ over 100,000 Oklahomans, native and non-native alike, and contribute tens of millions of dollars to the state treasury, and just an incredible source of vitality. And I always point out to people, these are jobs that aren't ever, or corporations that aren't ever moving to Dallas or Houston, and jobs that were never shipping to China. I mean, tribal presence in our state, they spend their money within the state for the most part, and put Oklahomans to work and make investments in a variety of enterprises that benefit the people of Oklahoma. So it's every bit as powerful an engine for our economy as agriculture and oil and gas and aerospace. Sadly, some people don't realize it, but the rise of tribal economies in the state of Oklahoma has probably been the biggest game changer since 1980. In the last 40 years, if you actually looked at growth. And those tribal economies are quite often centered in historically rural and disadvantaged parts of our state, where their presence really makes a difference. And where, honestly, if the tribes weren't investing there wouldn't be other people investing. So I certainly see it in my district over and over and over again between what the tribes that I'm fortunate enough to represent do for their communities. It's pretty extraordinary.
Thank you, Congressman. I think we have one more question from one of our members. So, Andy, do you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Congressman. This is Andy Gordon. I'm with Clearinghouse CDFI. I'm the Arizona Market President here. Had a question. Is your office following, I assume you are, the CRA Modernization Act being put out now by the Federal Reserve? There's a comment period through, I think, February, and I was just wondering how you might see that and how it affects Indian country. I noticed there is some, favorable looking on minority depository institutions, of which some are Native American, and any other facets that are of your particular interest. I was curious because there is a comment period, and I'm not sure exactly how the Native CDFI network might be able to weigh in on items of your interest.
That's a great question. I wish I had a great answer for it. I've been, I don't think this will surprise you, pretty preoccupied with politics in the last 6 or 8 weeks. And actually, the guy that does Native American Affairs for me, who is Cherokee, Josh Jackson, would be the guy that would normally position us on that. And he and I have not had a chance to visit about it. So, but I will duly check with him and see what we're doing.
Oh, thank you very much. I hesitate, but I'm going to ask anyway. I noticed of the 4 Native Americans that are in Congress, 2 are Republican and 2 are Democrat.
And by the way, we're going to have 2 more, so there'll be 6 in the next Congress, but it'll be 3 and 3. We have one of them is Native Hawaiian, but he's certainly an indigenous person, and then we picked up another Cherokee. The Hawaiian representative Democrat, Cherokee from New Mexico. So we're just growing leaps and bounds. This will be the largest number of indigenous Americans that we've ever had in the Congress of the United States at one time.
Well, it certainly is balanced representation then in the Native American caucus there of having 3 and 3. What I hesitated to ask is what's your point of view on the president-elect?
President-elect, you mean who is the president-elect?
However you want to answer that, Congressman.
Oh, well, you're very diplomatic. Look, I have no problem with the current president, contesting things and operating within the law. They have a right to do that. And, I've seen these things fought out into December before and the Gore-Bush thing. So that's all fine. No problem with that. But I think at the end of the day, if you're asking my opinion, I think it's awfully hard to flip multiple states and hundreds of thousands of votes. And, are there mistakes? Yeah, if 145 or almost 150 million Americans are voting, there's going to be some mistakes, but not on the scale we're talking about here. And there's a big difference between a mistake here or there and deliberate collusion and corruption and what have you. And I don't see any sign of that. Again, we'll have state and federal courts weighing in, I think, pretty shortly, and we'll see. But I would expect the current, president-elect to probably become the president. In terms of him on Indian issues, I think this will actually be an area of cooperation. To be, blunt, obviously the president-elect, former Vice President Biden, did not historically come from Indian country, and he was not a particularly big player in the Senate. But President Obama was very good on Native American issues. Matter of fact, I'm in my office in D.C. right now. I'm looking at a picture on the wall with the Violence Against Women Act of 2013 reauthorization, where we expanded tribal sovereignty, really, and gave tribes jurisdiction again. And, on one side of me is President Obama, and on the other side is Vice President Biden. And so I think Biden, learned a lot about Indian issues, Native issues in the Obama administration. I would expect he'll have very good people around him. I was pleased to see him commit to reestablish the Summit of Native Nations. That was such a valuable, thing in the Obama administration, bringing tribes together. So I think we'll do well. And again, I would expect we're going to be in divided government. There's going to be plenty of places that fight, but the great thing about Native issues is there's strong support on both sides of the aisle, and not just from the six of us that 5 have tribal affiliations, the others Native Hawaiian, but we have substantial numbers of members and on both sides of the aisle that really care about these issues. And we've had good success, particularly in the House, the last 2 years. So I think we'll be able to do more things like that and work together. So I actually look for a pretty productive couple of years, and again, I point to the success of the Native American Caucus and others in getting $8 billion for tribes in the CARES Act and getting additional monies, in the Indian Health Service and other areas. We really punched above our weight, so to speak, and I think those things become not only landmark victories, they set precedents. And if we're going to do something like this again, we include tribal government. So my hope is that we'll, again, have a pretty productive 2 years, and I certainly intend to go in it that way, and look forward to seeing, who's named over at Interior, who becomes the next Undersecretary for, Native Affairs and Indian Affairs, where we go at HHS, and who's going to head up the Indian Health Service, those sorts of things. But there's a good cadre of people, and again, I'm hopeful that we'll get people that genuinely care about the tribe, that are genuinely knowledgeable, and that we'll be able to move some bipartisan legislation and appropriations through Congress.
Thank you, Congressman. And while we're
Am I
talking,
on listen only mode?
while we're talking about policy,
Can you hear? Jackson, can you hear me? Am I
yes,
on listen
Yes.
only mode?
I can hear you.
me.
No, we
I can hear
can.
you.
Hi. Can I just ask one really quick question? This is Carol Lee Winderath from the Office of Native American Business Development at the Minority Business Development Agency at the U.S. Department of Commerce. And I just have one quick question for Congressman Cole, if I might. And it's circling back to the $8 billion in the CARES Act funding. HR 7557 was introduced to extend that deadline of when tribes have to pay. And you had indicated that you didn't believe there would be much action between now and the next session or the next Congress. So HR 7557 to extend that deadline, you don't believe that will go anywhere before?
I don't know if it will or not. I mean, I'm not in a position to decide what goes on the floor. If it gets the floor, I think it'll pass. And so we ought to be focused on that. And, it's honestly, one of the reasons I'm disappointed we did not do a fifth bill. We should have, because, again, there's a whole variety of groups, the tribes certainly among them, that want additional flexibility in terms of time and in terms of what they can use the funds they have for and how they account for them. And I think there's a great deal of sympathy. Look, the aim here is to get the money out the door, but let tribes use it in ways that they think are productive. So again, while I was talking primarily in terms of a fifth coronavirus bill or actually getting what's called an omnibus appropriations bill, where we've funded the government for all of fiscal year 2021, which would be through September 30th of 2021. These other items might get through. I just don't know. I don't know what, the majority leader, which is Steny Hoyer, and again, he's usually very good on our issues, so please don't take this as a criticism of him in any way. I just don't know what their priorities are at this point for the lame duck. And I think there's still some uncertainty, obviously, around the presidential election. I'll just be candid with you. You're all friends. Some shock in Democratic ranks in the House that they lost seats instead of gained seats. So, I think they're still sorting out the election process on their side. We are on our side as well. And there's not the clarity yet in terms of, we're certainly going to see some Native American issues. I think we probably have Lumbee recognition coming up fairly quickly. So I don't know yet what the majority leader has decided to put on the calendar.
Okay, thank you.
I'd like to ask another question, sir, if I may. This is Christopher from Muskogee Fund, Creek Nation again.
Sure.
One of the big things and I also wanted to tell you, Pete Upton is our chairman of the Native CDFI Network. He's with Native 360 in Nebraska. He apologizes for not being able to talk to you. He wanted to, but he has a training going on at the same time frame.
Oh, quite all right. I certainly understand.
But one of the things I want to bring up is a huge priority for us as CDFI serving all over the country, serving either Native tribes or Native people, multiple tribes, depending on our area, is really a disappointment in the Trump administration with his continuing zeroing out appropriations for CDFI fund, and thankfully Congress overrode that. But we really need advocates for increasing the appropriations to the Community Development Financial Institutions Fund, specifically in the NACA, the Native American Community Assistance programs, because we're oversubscribed and it's always at least half of what the demand is. And we really need that number to go up. So I'm hoping that you and Congressman Nolan can fight for that for our people, please.
Well, I don't have any problem, frankly, supporting those sorts of things. The problem is always, what's the overall spending limit? We don't just get to make up a number. There's a number that the budget committee lays down or that the two sides agree on. That's the overall number. And then you're in competition there. And there's very seldom a time I don't request additional money for native expenditures, frankly, all across the board. But it will depend on what is agreed to at the top line, well above us, as to how much dollars are available. And then you're in a fight with everybody else that wants additional money, which is pretty much everybody, as to what you can get. Not unusual to see, every president's budget is dead on arrival when it gets to Congress. It's an aspirational document. It's not a real document. They quite often zero out things that they expect Congress to put back in. So, but I'm more than happy to work on those. And, the best thing is to get in touch with us early and flag them. By law, we should see what the Biden administration wants to do if he is the next president of the United States by the middle of February. Now, they may not quite make that deadline. Most new administrations don't. There's no penalty for not coming up with the budget, but it'll come along, sometime in sometime in February to mid-March. We should get a budget, and then we'll know at least what the initial recommendation is. And that's where the Appropriation Committee starts. They look at the president's number, but in the end, they'll have a certain pot of money assigned to the relevant subcommittee, and they'll be looking at all the different agencies and programs underneath their jurisdiction. And that's where you come up, with what's the final amount of money. But again, I'm always happy to advocate for more in Indian country, because honestly, we're historically underfunded across the board, whether it's education, healthcare, economic development, infrastructure, no question. But we have made real progress in the last few years. We just have such a long way to go, given the challenges some of our communities face.
Thank you, sir. So would the best time to reach out be for us to approach Congress and Senate staff in January, or
Yeah, absolutely. Sooner is better. Yeah, but for the next budget, yes. And you should be talking to, I mean, the president will propose a budget, which is important, but yeah, informing, working with the staffs on, particularly on interior appropriations, but all of our people that have an interest in this, but again, letting them know
specifically
sooner.
Treasury for us. Yeah, Treasury appropriations for what we do.
Okay.
And what CDFIs do. Thank you, sir.
Well, that'll be in financial services, and but again, everybody on the appropriations committee can put in a request, so any appropriator is helpful.
Well, thank you, Congressman. I'm getting a message from your team that you have to go, but just to underline what our board member, Christopher Coburn, said, that the appropriations for this program, which only gets 16 million a year, is the number one priority for our organization, the Native CDFI Network. So we think that that investment will return great rewards for not only Indian country, but the country as a whole.
Good morning, this is Sue.
Sure.
Do you have time for another
Hi.
question, Congressman?
No, I really, honestly, I've got scheduled calls that I'm late on right now.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
No problem. Well, we appreciate you joining us.
Okay.
Thank you for your
What
time.
happens is
Okay,
that
and
goes,
again, I very much apologize, but I've got a member of Congress hanging on the phone right now that I was supposed to talk to.
All right. Okay. Well, thank you, Congressman.
Hey, thank you, and happy to work with you on these matters. Thank you for bringing them to my attention.
All right. Well, we'll be in touch with you.
Okay.
Okay.
Please do. Thank you again. Bye-bye.
Sorry about that, but we had him budgeted for 15 minutes, so he stayed an extra 15 minutes with us. So that was good. Thank you, Christopher, for your questions, and I think we've got a game plan to follow up with. So, and now I want to just, I don't know if Ted is on the call, but we wanted to give a quick recap of the Opportunity Finance Network's meeting this past week. And so Ted Piccolo, congratulations. I don't think he joined us. Otherwise, he probably would have asked a question too. And
My heart skipped a beat, Jackson. I thought you were going to ask me to do that. So.
yeah. Ted with 1D, I think. Yeah. Ted with 1D. And also congratulations to Anna LeBeau and Jeff Tickle. They both got an award at the Native CDFI Awards at OFN. And Anna, are you on? Anna's probably zoomed out.
Yeah, I'm here. I'm
Oh,
sitting.
hey, you're not zoomed out. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So, and yeah, have any additional thoughts? I thought your speech was great, and I thought it was came from the heart and acknowledging folks, especially the network of Native CDFIs and how Native CDFIs support each other and we're able to learn. And I thought that was a good message and one we try to echo as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was really surprised when I got the call that we received the award. And, it's interesting because I have watched, for all these last 5 years, my peers receive this award and I just, always aspired to be as amazing as they are. Not that I'm at that point yet, but it was just more like once I received that call and my staff is all new, they couldn't understand why it was such a big deal. And, I had to explain it to them. I showed them websites and just explained this is why we do the things we do. There are, heroes all throughout Indian country doing what we do. And so, and when I first started this job, it was challenging because I was a staff of one and I didn't have money to travel or meet anybody. And then I got invited to a meeting that was hosted by OWISTA and I met my peers there. And it was amazing to be able to have that connection because I wasn't alone. There were a lot of people in the same boat as an emerging CDFI, and they had the same issues and same questions. And it just really helped to be able to have those names and numbers to get my questions answered. And so, yeah, I mean, I've had people call me now asking for assistance and kind of help with the trials and tribulations that come through, the steps that we go through when it comes down to working towards certification. So yeah, it was a great honor, and we're really, really excited to get moving with our project.
Awesome. Well, congratulations, Anna.
Thank you.
It's great news. And then here are a couple other highlights. Lisa Mensa, who's joined our call, she acknowledged Native CDFIs, and she made sure that this was prominent in their agenda. And also she acknowledged the Native CDFI Network and a few of our members. The Senator John Thune from South Dakota acknowledged Native CDFIs in his neck of the woods. And I was just talking with Cora May Haskell. Cora May, you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hey. And so Cora May, so you were telling us John Thune went and visit you all?
Yes, he's been to our four-band site a couple of different times. Not real recently, but he has been to our program, and when he was speaking, I know that he was speaking a lot about us because we are the pilot program for South Dakota Housing that are doing the mortgages through that program.
Yeah, and Joanna's on the call, and Joanna flagged that right away, that this was something that he called out specifically, his support for the pilot program out there, and Native CDFI Network, our broader support for expanding that pilot and making it permanent. So thanks to you both. And Pete Upton and Russ Siegel and Linnell Smith hosted a listening and talk session just yesterday. So I thought that all went great. And Robin Danner, who's on our board, she did a talk on the first day. And then Nimi Poo, is Jonelle on? They were one of their folks were featured there too.
Yeah, I'm here, Jackson.
Hey.
No, that was a really good opportunity. We were contacted by OFN to shoot a video, and it was you didn't have a crew or people fly out, so we had to get creative to shoot a video. And so we decided to pick up Stacia Morfin, who's into cultural tourism, and so she did a whole webinar training series with IDRS Acorn Project on building cultural tourism for Native communities. So she's kind of really spearheading this effort, and she was supposed to have just a magnificent year this year with tourism and river boats coming in. But she did a pivot, so she opened up a gift shop on Main Street there in Lewiston, Idaho. So that was part of her success story. And there was a lot of things that were cut out, but Kim Pate, who's one of our board members, was also part of the mentorship with Stacia. So she did get some phone calls. So she has some prospects for future tourism with her company. So it was a good experience. But we were happy to be featured with that. And then, but I did notice that the Idaho senator mentioned MoFi, but I got to remind him there's some Native CDFIs that are in Idaho.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
I don't know if Shalyn Kellogg's on the call, but we before COVID hit, we went to some of your congressmen, their offices right before, and it's good to see you back in the office, and hope you're doing better now. Looks like. Yeah. And with that, some additional, I think some of our folks joined the call with Lael Brainerd, who's the Federal Reserve Board Chairman, one of our governors for the Federal Reserve, and they wanted to talk about their Community Reinvestment Act, what they're calling the Advance Notice of Proposed Rulemaking, ANPR, that and the talk just that Andy mentioned, high level, I guess some highlights from the talk were that she kind of went over some of her support for Indian country, a little bit of her background. Tani, she actually went out to South Dakota a couple years ago. So Tani Brunch, who was also on the panel, talked about that. And there, I think what's notable about their ANPR is obviously it's different than the OCCs, where the OCC set up ways for organizations to get like a multiplier, what they were calling a multiplier. But they do want to make sure that investments in native CDFIs, loans to native CDFIs count toward banks' CRA score, no matter where the bank is and no matter where the native CDFI are. And so that's something that we reiterated. We also stated that we want to make sure that investments like equity or equity-like investments into native CDFIs like EQ2s count toward a bank's CRA score. And we also said that that we want the Federal Reserve to go on a big listening tour, invest in teaching banks about native CDFIs, something that I think the OCC and FDIC were doing, and we think something like that should be replicated. We think it should be made bigger, and not only for banks to learn more, but also how native CDFIs can learn how to better partner. And I think Dave Castillo kind of started us talking a bit about that, as I think the FDIC, or no, the OCC was doing that recently. And I thought something like that is something that we need to support, encourage, and really grow. And stop me if you have any questions on any of this. And I said we should be able to end a little early. I think we can. I got a couple announcements. I think OESA's, they have a COVID-19 response fund that they talked about last week. That deadline is, I think, on Sunday. Next week, we're going to have someone from the Social Venture Circle come talk with us on Friday to talk about investments in individual native CDFIs. And so if that's something that you're interested in, we want to hear about that. And the following week, we don't have any call. And other than that, I want folks to stay safe. And I just want to pause really quick for any questions or comments or announcements anybody has. Oh, yeah. And yeah, and Joanna has a few other highlights from OFN I just missed. But yeah, Ted had a panel, Ted Bulow, and yeah, Jeff Glass, and yeah, Angie Main. I forgot about that panel, but I did watch it. And they talked about the Section 184 and the USDA 502 guaranteed loans. I thought, yeah, that was a really, really great panel and really useful. And so thank you for that, Joanna.
And that was Joanna's panel. We were just her honored guests.
I thought it was useful. Joanna, do you know if they have recorded that, and if folks who weren't able to watch it, are they going to be able to watch it?
Yes, it's recorded. I don't know if the actual Q&A session was recorded, but the panel itself was recorded. So, and they did they posted the handouts, but it was really hard to find the handouts out online. So Janelle and Tanya, I'm happy to send it to you. If anyone else want, I mean, basically it's the sections of their HUD, of the HUD and USDA guidebooks, but I'll send everything to you that, you know, we distributed, as well as the PowerPoint to anyone that wants it, because we're always trying to find more, support the housing lenders.
Cool. Cool. So yeah, there's a few folks that are interested in that already. So Tanya Plummer and Janelle are interested. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Anyone else have any other announcements? Questions for the group?
I'd just like to say happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope everybody's in a safe place.
Thank you, Cora May. Yeah. So Cora May is calling from South Dakota and Cheyenne River, and they're getting ready to lock everybody down there. So hopefully, yeah. Oh, we're thankful for everybody that's involved in the work that you're doing. Yeah. All right. Well, I don't hear any other things. Christopher Coburn, do you have any final thoughts to take us out? Actually, I know he's got another commitment he's on too, so you can't talk, no worries.
Yeah. No, I just want to thank everybody for being on the call, and thank you, Jackson, for lining up people. Getting Congressman Cole on board was important, and we appreciate that. And just as many people as we can get on of those 6, so they can really be champions for what we do collectively in the next Congress. I think that ought to be a goal. So again, working on how we tell our story. We all need to individually work on that, and if we can think of organizing our success stories appropriate to the districts of the people that are represented, and then telling their staff that in a way that's digestible, I think that will amplify our effect in winning more awareness of what we need out of Congress. So thank you, everyone, for being on the call. I hope you all have a great Thanksgiving holiday. And, we need to support things that partners are doing as far as other bills. But I think being organized like this is just going to make us all stronger. So thank you for what you do. Those that have helped us, thank you for what you've helped us with in the past. And just the spirit of cooperation amongst CDFIs, if we can share resources more and really lift each other up, that needs to be a focus as we go on.
Thank you, Christopher. And thank you, everybody. All right. And we'll see you all next week.